Alright, so as the public service announcement for this video, most of you might want to know, how the hell do I open this thing? Before we get into the review, I'm going to show you just for you. See this bolt right here? Touch the back right here and push it like that. Comes apart, piece of cake. Life savings in here. Comes a little container. Let's take a look. 20 bucks, 40 bucks. Yeah, I'm gonna need to save a little more money. The EDC Multitool is available at Worldwide Cyclery, Jensen, and Backcountry. If you live in the Grand Valley, you could order it from Ruby Canyon Cycles at the intersection of 3rd and Main. Hello, NAR Masters, and today we are going to do a comprehensive overanalyzation of the Oneup EDC Multitool. The Oneup EDC Multitool is basically an everyday carry trail side tool item that you can have with you at all times. You can't forget this thing at home because there's a couple ways that you can install it and keep it going with you on your rides. On my bike, I have carried the EDC in both ways, basically with the steer tube install and also with the EDC pump. But first, let's talk about what you're actually getting on this thing. If I pull out the handy dandy Oneup sheet that my EDC pump actually came with, it has a nice list of items that you get. So you get the multi-tool. It's got 2mm hex wrench, 2.5, 3mm, 4mm, 5mm, 6mm, and 8mm, as well as a T25. But that's not all. Additionally, you get a flathead screwdriver, a tire lever, and in that tire lever it holds a chain breaker, a quick link breaker, a spare link storage area, which is very important, sealed storage capsule, which basically it's just a container that you can put like dollar bills or your pipe tobacco, as you just saw. And, and you also get a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, spoke keys, spare chainring bolt if you have the Oneup and maybe that's attached to a spider or something, and finally the EDC top cap tool. That's a lot of items for your everyday carry that you will definitely need at some point on the trail. In the worst case scenario, you get to use them to help somebody else out. So if we stay on the topic of just having the EDC tool, there are a couple things to note here. The only way to carry it is going to be in your backpack, but you're probably going to want to carry it in your steer tube, and the only way to do that is to buy the EDC tap. Note that everything is going to be down in the description for details and links and all that stuff that you can check that out. And there's also quite a bit of media on the EDC as well. If you do decide to run with the EDC tool installed into your steer tube, there are a couple things that you have to note. You will have to either find a bike shop that does have the tap. So you have to buy the tap or go to a bike shop that has the tap. It's going to run you 30 bucks. Again, links in the description for that. In addition to having to buy the tap kit, you also have to buy a top cap. And the EDC top caps are different in the way that they use a cassette tool to compress down. I actually really like the way that it uses the cassette tool because, I mean, that is putting some really even pressure on the whole thing and not just kind of putting anything on the star nut. But you're probably thinking, I'm not going to carry a cassette tool on the trail. Well, there's actually a item on the multi-tool that is like kind of a mini cassette tool that's designed to take off the top cap, and they call it the EDC top cap tool. Note that the EDC top cap tool is not going to work on your cassette, unfortunately. It would be sweet if it did, but it's not. As we work our way through the unbiased and objective review and talking about what you get when you get the EDC, we're going to move over to the pump. And you have two options. You could get the 100cc or you get the 70cc models. And they're very high volume pumps. I like them a lot. And you basically get really nice construction of them, high efficiency, double sealed alloy pistons, fully weatherproof internals, a Presta only head, and most importantly, you get an integrated CO2 inflator. Obviously, you're going to install this thing wherever you have your water bottle cage mount, and it's basically held together with a O-ring like material with a nice tab, so you got that to look forward to when you put it on your bike. Additionally, it will also be compatible with a water bottle cage if you have a bike that is friendly to water bottle cages, which mine is not. So now we'll be moving over to the more subjective part of the review, and I'm going to opine on the different ways to use this thing and where I've used it and what I like about it and what I don't like about it. But let's start with the steer tube mount and the tap kit that you install the Oneup. Now, for the record, I haven't really tried too hard to monkey with it. It's just kind of the way I set it up and what I'm using to make this work. So, I mean, there's probably fixes to what I'm about to say. But number one, I am not a fan of mounting the EDC in my steer tube. I got a lot of rattling out of it. When you're filming YouTube videos, I mean, you get people that are sending you messages all the time that are just whining about the rattling cables on your bike. And then you add a top cap that's rattling on top of that, and that's just not a good mix for me. But I only get that rattle when I have the CO2 cartridge installed on the bottom, or if I have that sealed container case also in there. So I haven't had any issues outside that, but you know, the other thing is my steer tube just might be cut too long to really make that work. The rattling isn't all that I have issue with here. I also am not a big fan of the O-ring and kind of the way it hits and merges with the EDC top cap. If it gets really cold, it's kind of like you need a multi-tool to get your multi-tool out. So you do need to keep it greased. I actually took some grease that I use for my Yeti Switch Infinity Link, and that contains a bunch of molybdenum. Putting the moly on it really did a good job of helping it get out of the tube. Also, this is really, really important. So the spare chain bolt that you have that basically holds the chain breaker to the tire lever in the assembly, if that bolt comes loose and the system kind of falls apart in the steer tube, you are in for a very interesting ride. We'll just say that. So this actually happened to me. You definitely want to make sure that you have some Loctite on it. But if that thing comes loose and starts falling apart in the steer tube, you're going to have to find some really creative avenues for getting that thing out. And I almost took a bandsaw to it, but somehow I magically pried my tire lever back in and somehow barely got it out of the steer tube. So that is something to keep in mind right there. You got to tighten the hell out of that chainring bolt. But let's really talk about the applicable use of this thing. It is probably got the most options out there out of any multi-tool, because I mean, where are you going to find a link breaker and a chain breaker and all your Allens on one tool? Now, it's not quite perfect, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm bashing it, because we're about to talk about the pump. But what I'm really getting at is this is a tool that people that want to ride without backpacks that they want, and that's the primary audience here. And so if you're just carrying this in your steer tube, there's still a lot left to be desired from the Oneup multi-tool. If you're running the multi-tool and the steer tube install only, you're still going to have to carry your extra stuff along, like your tube, your pump, and a CO2 inflator if that's what you so desire. So that's going to have to get strapped on or carried in a fanny pack somewhere. And there can be a little bit of confusion. The multi-tool itself does not have a CO2 inflator, so that's only exclusive to the pump. And to me, the really big win here is that the tool is on the exterior of the bike, and that is super convenient. And for some people, that's fine and that's great, and that would be a great reason to install that if you're already knowledgeable of how you're going to have to carry this thing. But for me, I actually go full backpackless, no fanny a lot of times. And I want something where I can have basically everything I need at my disposal. And so that's why we're going to move over to talk about the pump. So the pump is something that I already carried already. I had a specialized pump, and it was very small, and it attached to the frame, and it was very, very low volume. So anytime I had a flat or I needed added air, we were going to be there for the next year and a half. Now, I got the EDC pump because A, I was really tired of the EDC tool installed in the steer tube, and B, I also just wanted a better pump. So with the EDC pump, take all my criticisms of the top cap and just throw them out the door, because this just changes everything. And if you're regretting running the tap that you had when you installed the top cap tool to your steer tube on your fork, don't worry, the EDC pump comes with a little mini top cap, which could also double as a CO2 holder. in which you can basically just thread an extra CO2 cartridge to that little top cap thing that covers the whole assembly. But then again, going back to the pump, you literally have everything that you need on the trail at this point. You have your tire lever, your chain breaker, your quick links, you have your air pump, and then a lot of times when I go and ride, I don't carry just an air pump, but I always carry a CO2 inflator as well, just because sometimes the air pump might not work, or the other way around, vice versa with the CO2 inflator. Now, with the Oneup Multitool and the pump, you also have a CO2 inflator at the very end nozzle for your Presta thing. So you have two avenues of inflating your tire, which is really, really important to getting you out of there and keep you from walking your bike, because I am all about not having to walk my bike out from mechanical failure. And quite frankly, the EDC pump is probably just the best external pump that you can carry on your bike that money can buy. And for this review, I only actually have the 100cc pump. I have never tried or experimented with the 70cc, but I've only been running with the 100cc. So a couple notes to make on the pump real quick is that you can pump your tire up without having the multi-tool in the pump itself. So it runs a separate chamber. Also, I mean, you can keep the multi-tool in there and still pump. So, I mean, you have both options at that, which is really nice. And honestly, there's just not a lot to talk about the pump because it's a pretty dang good pump if you ask me. So let me give you some final thoughts and key points on this before I give you my overall opinion and impressions of this system. Number one, you do have a tire lever attached on this thing, and I recommend you carry two separate tire levers, and here's the reason why. If you have two Pedro's levers, I would just wrap them in your tube because you're going to have to carry a tube anyway, and if you're not carrying a tube, then you don't need tire levers, you know? But my reasoning here is that if you break the tire lever on the tool setup, basically you're going to have to carry everything out in your pocket because they're going to be loose and there's just no point. And you're going to have to find a replacement tire lever. It's just not worth it at the end of the day, especially if you're carrying a tube. But then again, I've never used the Oneup tire lever. I don't really have any reason to run the Oneup tire lever because I'm going to use other tire levers, or in the most ideal circumstances, I recommend that you remove your tire without having to use tire levers. And what I mean by that is actually remove by hand. The seal container for the EDC tool is very, very convenient. It's a great idea and I love it. You can use it to carry some tubeless repair items like the bacon strip and plug. You could also carry your stub, your backup stub for your ski pass, or I should say at the bike park. And my last point is you kind of have to work with this thing a little bit if you want to make it more ergonomical. The tool itself is not very big, so you're not going to get the necessary leverage sometimes to break something off. So what I do when I have to use a particular tool in this instance that's going to require some leverage is just split all the hex bolts and other additional tools out. So at first glance, it's going to seem like it's not very ergonomical, but when you do spread out all the tools, you really can get it in your whole hand. And at that point, it actually is quite ergonomical. That's how I use it. So now, do I like this thing or not? Well, here's my opinion. Show me a better external multi-tool carry system. I couldn't find one. Maybe there are some out there, but I'm really sold on this thing, especially with it in the pump. You could watch my video for Macridge, and I briefly talk about running the all-in multi-tool, and I really did like the all-in multi-tool. That wasn't perfect either, and you're still going to have a lot of the same issues that you had with this thing. So again, for somebody like me where I'm riding really short loops all the time, that could be anywhere from 7 to 8 miles to 10. I don't need to carry a backpack necessarily in cooler weather conditions, and one water bottle is kind of good enough because I'm just within that range where I can walk back to the truck. Okay, let's talk about grades for the Oneup EDC multi-tool. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on the grading. However, I will talk about a few items that I feel that I need to expand on right here. I might go into further detail in a podcast style format in the future. I guess we'd call that a audio video or something. So my grading, I'm going to try to be as objective and unbiased as possible. If I think that I have an item that might have user error, I'm going to give the grade a U, meaning that grade is unavailable until maybe I figure it out. It's not fair to grade something if I'm not using it right. And the perfect example of this would be me grading the EDC installed into the steer tube. There could be potential user error there. So some highlight grades I have for you is the pump, I give an A+, the CO2 inflator, A as well. The multi-tool, I give that a B. It's good, especially when you use it like I showed you before, but I would really like a standard flat head and Phillips tools, because I mean there's a couple of those still floating around there, especially the Phillips and some shifters. So the unavailable grades that I have for the EDC tool system are A, the chain breaker, B, the tire lever, and C, the link breaker, as well as the installed version on the steer tube. So the tire lever and the link breaker I'm just not going to use. I have KMC tire levers and they basically double as link breakers as well. I carry those with my tube. As far as the chain breaker goes, it's actually quite difficult to use. There's quite a bit of media out there, so check some of the other YouTubers out for that one. I am only recommending it using this as a last resort item and really being careful when you use it. My final comment on the EDC tool system is that it's very innovative and it's problem solving and it keeps you extraordinarily well prepared, especially in a backpack-less setup. But even though I kind of think that this caters more to somebody that's not carrying a backpack, it really can be a tool for everyone, even if it's not mounted on the bike. So my final grade for the EDC multi-tool system, your everyday carry item, I give an A. I like it. And that's gonna wrap up our EDC tool review. So did I cover material that was helpful to you and maybe would impact whether you would buy it or not? Was there something I missed? Did I nail some issues right on the head? Let me know down in the comments and let me know especially what you think. Good feedback left, either positive or negative, will probably be read by me on my new audio show series, in which I could supplement and boost some of these product reviews, clarify any loose ends that I have out there. Hey guys, I'm signing off and we'll see you next time. We'll catch you on down the road. Thanks for watching.